Hey guys, it's Truth is Unpopular. I'm Tyler Onachek, and this is part one of the series, The Did He Say Wars, titled Biblical Cosmology. So biblical cosmology, what am I getting ready to talk about? So biblical cosmology is the study of the heavens from the point of view of the Bible. What I'd really like to get into is, my story on this, go through Genesis 1 and supporting verses for each of the days that I feel are important to talk about. I guess what I'd like to start is how I got into this. And before that, this really is geared towards believers. If you are a Christian, I'm imploring you, Proverbs 8:13, he that answers a matter before he hears it is folly and shame to him. So I just ask you to stick through with me. If you really believe that the Bible is true and everything he said is true, and regardless of what you think about something, if God said it, you're going to have to be the one that changes, not him. So, I guess, I'd like to start with a little backstory into how I got into this. So, this is of God completely, and I think you'll see that in my little short story, but, so this happened probably like a little under 2 years after really getting into the whole feasts and really getting into the idea that Christmas and Easter were not of God. So at the time I wasn't really studying in depth or hard on anything. At the time I decided I'm the type of guy, I guess I'll go with, that likes, if I can't afford something, I'm going to look at the absolute best you could do. At the time I was kind of interested in long distance photography. So, I was looking at super telephoto lenses and DSLRs for it and whatnot. But I stumbled across this site, beyondhorizons.eu, which for some reason is down now. But anyway, so I stumbled across this site, and on there they have the current long distance photography world record. And what they've done is, on a peak in Spain, they photographed a peak, I believe, in the Italian Alps. Pic Gaspard is the name. Anyways, it's over 440 kilometers separating the two, or 275 miles, which is just absurd if you think about how far that really is. It's like 4, maybe 5 hour drive. Anyways, so I'm looking at this, and I'm like, that's so cool. And I go straight to YouTube, and I'm like, let's find something that explains how they did it, the setup, this, that, and the other thing. So I'm just looking, and I quick see a little video with a thumbnail with the picture in it. And I don't read anything, I just click, let's see what this is. So I'm watching. This is all of God, remember? I'm watching, and the guy's like, it's not possible. Pic Gaspard should be hidden by almost a mile below the horizon due to curvature. And you're like, wait, what? I don't know if I've ever really given it thought to the whole idea that stuff really actually gets hidden. You think it's so big you can't, I don't know, I just never thought about it. It says it's only possible on a flat earth. And I was like, what? You're just kind of dumbfounded. But unlike other people that I've tried to bring up this topic, and if you haven't guessed, I'm a biblical flat earther now. But the other people who I see the topic, they just get angry instant. It's probably the quickest to anger subject I've ever seen. But for me, it was just like, wait, what? And at the time, like I said, I don't think I was really studying hard in my life, in the Bible, and I wasn't really looking into stuff. But God spoke to me because in that instant, it dawned on me. Does the Bible talk about this? Kind of like you're like, oh boy, So I stumbled across this video by Dean Odell, and he's got a number of verses, some of them I'm using, but the one that really stuck out with me. So he comes across and starts talking about Job 38:14. And if you don't know Job, the first 37 chapters is Job and his friends going back and forth. 38, God steps in and he says, he starts talking, where were you, Job? And probably to the guys too, but he seems to just talk to Job. But anyways, where were you, Job, when I laid the foundations, when I did this, that, and the thing? Well, in 38:14, God chooses the picture. He says, it, being the earth, clay, changed under a seal. And in the video he shows clay and a seal, pulls it up, and you're like, it's flat with raised edges, which is what it kind of describes in that verse. And in that instant was like, I just remember pacing around the room being like, oh my goodness, what just happened? Because deep down I knew it had to be true, because those were God's chosen words to Job. And clay under seal does not to me describe forming a ball. And in that instant, everything changed for me. Okay, so if you've stuck with me through this, I'd like to go through Genesis 1 and supporting verses of why I believe God does not describe the heliocentric model, which is likely what you believe. If you don't know, it's basically built off of the Big Bang. You got Big Bang happens, nothing explodes, creates everything. So you got the sun is flying out from the center where the bang happened. And Earth is rotating around the sun as they're both flying out from the center. So we got all these different movements. We're flying with the sun away from the center, we're rotating around the sun, and then at our equator, we're moving 1,000 miles per hour. So that's a lot of movement. And what I'd like to show you, try to explain and get to why I believe, is that God never describes a sphere floating in space flying around the sun. So Genesis 1, I'm sure if you're a Christian you've read it, and probably about as far as you get is 6 days of creation and 7th day rests. And that's about as far as I'd gotten as well. The rest just seemed far out there, really. So I'd like to go through it. So I'm going to call it pre-day 1. It doesn't really mean anything to me if it's day 1, part of day 1, or it's before. I'm going to treat it in this as pre-day 1. So in the beginning it says he created the heaven and the earth. Earth was without form, and darkness over the face of the deep, and the Spirit hovers over it. So in the beginning, we've already got a contradiction of what man tells you, from nothing to where God says it exists. It's got water on it, absolute height, because the Spirit is hovering over it. So I'd like to add some verses to this to support the idea that, the earth isn't moving and its shape. So I wanted to talk about and add that the Bible talks 4 times about it being on pillars. You got it in 1 Samuel 2:8, you got it in Job 9:6, Job 26:11, and Psalm 75:3. So right there we have a discrepancy. Where is the pillars on a sphere? Let's continue. He describes it at least 4 times I have in my notes for this video, that it's not moving. It's stable and can't be moved, he says. You got 1 Chronicles 16:30, Psalms 93:1, Psalms 96:10, and Psalms 104:5. So right there, those 4 verses, you literally can't believe what God said, what man says. You have to choose between the two. God says it's not moving. So right there, through the Bible, I submit to you, we're not orbiting the sun. And then some verses about the shape. Obviously my favorite, the Job 38:14, it's clay under a seal. In Proverbs 8:27, it says he drew a circle in the face. And I'd like to submit to you that, how would you draw a circle on a sphere on the face of something? I guess what I'm trying to get at is, when he says he drew a circle on the face of the earth, to me that says maybe it doesn't encompass the whole thing. So say you got like a box that maybe this doesn't encompass the whole thing, but he draws a circle inside of it, into the face of it, not necessarily including the whole thing. So to create a sphere, you wouldn't have any edges left over. I'm saying that's kind of what I get led to believe there. But anyways, Isaiah 40:22 says God sits above the circle, and in some renditions it says disk of the earth. So right there, and there's a whole bunch more, and I recommend, and I'll have a link to it, a guy named Rob Skiba and the site Testing the Globe. He really goes through and breaks down, a whole lot more than I'm going to get into of the verses. So I encourage you to maybe go to that after this. So that's kind of pre-day one, and some supporting evidence, I believe, that the Bible does not support us spinning and flying around in space. We've got it's on pillars, it's not moving, and stuff talking about a shape that does not in any way make me say, oh yeah, he's talking about a sphere. So then you get to the day one. Maybe that was part of day one. But anyways, you get to day one, and he talks about creating light. I'm not going to get into this because I don't really understand it. Because if you know, day 4 is when sun, moon, and stars show up. So what this is, I'm not even going to try to speculate because, I'll wait for him to show me something. So then we get to day 2. This is where it kind of gets interesting. So I'm sure you've seen the pancake in space with edges and water falling off. There's not a single biblical creationist or flat earther that believes in any of that. We believe in an enclosed system. The exact shape, dimension, everything is up for debate. I'll probably get into a lot of this in a later video, some like more outside the Bible kind of stuff, but this is really just the, God said this, man says that, who are you going to believe? So in day 2 he talks about he creates a firmament to divide the waters from waters. Best way I can think to maybe describe it is fill the bathtub or a sink or something with water, get a cup, put it in, and then put it on the bottom. And then you've just recreated day 2. You've got water on the outside, and you've got water on the inside, which is what he describes. But I guess, some people are like, the firmament is just gas and space or whatever. I'm going to submit to you that there's a number of verses that would not lend me to believe that it's some kind of gas space thing. So in Job 37:18, it's described as strong, like molten looking glass. In Psalms 19:1, it says it shows his handiwork, so it's something, he fashioned. In Amos 9:6, it says his chambers are in the heavens, and his vaulted dome is over the earth. So there's some physical thing that is over the earth. That's why I believe it is a container. In Isaiah 48:13, it says he formed it with his right hand. I don't have it in my notes, just popped in my head, but I think it describes him as pounding it out. But anyways, he says he formed it with his right hand. So I think God is proud of this work because he has his prophet write about it. And then one of the other ones I think is interesting, and I'd ask you if you believe in the heliocentric space, everything, void, nothingness, where the waters above the firmament are. I know there was that Kent Hovind thing where this ice thing evaporated after the flood. Well, in Psalms 148:4, the psalmist writes, the waters above praise him. Psalms happen way after the flood. So psalmist still says that they're there. Where are they in this void nothingness of space? God says they're still there. And just kind of a slightly different take on it. If you go to Ezekiel 1, this is Ezekiel is caught up and shown a vision. Well, the first vision he's shown. And he encounters the 4 living beings that are before God. The ones with the 4 heads and kind of crazy. But in chapter 1:26, it talks about the 4 living beings having a dome over their heads. And it's the same word, I believe, as what you find in Genesis 1. On top of that dome is a throne. And on that throne is the appearance of a man. And I believe that appearance of the man is then later described as Yeshua. But that's for another time. But I think that the living beings before God probably are representing what he created. That is my take. I just find it kind of interesting and thought I'd add it here. So those are some more supporting verses about, the firmament not being space, something hard, a physical barrier that divides us from waters above us. Genesis chapter 1, talking about day 3. You go to 1:9. Just, I'm not going to get too much into it because I don't really know what to think. But he separates. So if you go back to your example with in the sink or tub or whatever with the cup, day 3 basically is he drains the water underneath the cup or the dome, and he creates dry land and all that. So day 4. Now we finally get to sun, moon, and stars. In day 4, it says he creates them and he sets them in the firmament. How that works, I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know, but that's what he said. And as we talked about in day 2, I believe it to be a physical hard object. How it works, that's on God. Maybe one day we'll find out. So he talks about them being placed in the firmament. But one thing that the heliocentric model teaches, they say, sun's the light, moon just reflects. In Genesis, it says God creates 2 lights, a greater to rule the day, the sun, lesser to rule the night. God specifically calls it a light. I'm going to go with him. I have yet to see a rock that reflects anything like when you look up. I mean, it's crazy how bright it is. Anyways, so some verses to kind of support that, it is, the moon is its own light, and it's not this heliocentric, we're spinning around the sun. So in Psalms 136, 7, and all the way through 9, it talks about God made 2 lights. And he's talking about the sun and moon. He also calls the moon a her. And he says, and she gives her light. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is, he says it is a light, not a reflector. Psalms 19:6. He says the sun travels in a circuit. It doesn't say the earth travels around the sun. He says it travels in a circuit. If you go to the story of Joshua 10:13, sun and moon stand still. In the heliocentric model, we'd have had to come to a complete halt for that to have happened, which I think would have been probably more catastrophic than anything was going on fighting, because they'd have been going, Jerusalem's probably, well, you'd have to look at the latitude, but I imagine in the 700 to 800 mile an hour range or more. That'd be pretty significant to come to the halt on. But he says they stood still. To not say the earth stood still, he said sun and moon stood still. If you go to Isaiah 38:8, it's the story. It's just King Hezekiah has just been given 10 or is it 15? Anyways, he's given extra life, and the sign God gives to him that this will come true. He moves the sun backwards, like 8 increments on a dial or something. I forget exactly how it goes, but he moves the sun backwards. If on a heliocentric model, we'd have had to come to a halt and then reversed and then continued. He just said he moves it back. Pretty simple. If you go to the Matthew 24:29, Yeshua, Jesus, is talking, and he says in that final days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon won't give her light. Yeshua says it's a light. And then, I'm not going to really get into stars here. That's a whole nother topic. But he says the stars will fall to the earth. And in the words of Rob Skiba, if that's going to happen, we probably have bigger problems than worrying about, God's wrath coming if these bazillion mile wide, suns are going to come crashing to earth, would be burned away. Now he says, they will fall. This is your Messiah who said that, okay? So, day 5 and 6, I'm not really going to get into. I think we all agree it's not evolution. So, hopefully you stuck through this. Hopefully it made some sense. Hopefully, or my hope really is it gets you curious and causes you to look and pray. Because it's a faith thing. A lot of people are like, well, what does the shape of the earth matter? A lot. It changed everything for me. If anything, I would go so far to say it was salvational experience for me, because that was when I really felt like I came alive. Everything started to make sense. The Bible became clear, and basically everything else just fell in line. It became the whole series. God says one thing, man and Satan and all say another thing. Don't waver between two opinions. Choose this day whom you will serve. For me, if I'm wrong when I go to heaven, I'm prepared 100%. I'm sorry, God. I took your word literally. Oops. If you go to heaven and you know this stuff, and he asks you, why if I'm right, and I fully believe it because the Bible supports it. But if you go and you die believing the heliocentric model, knowing that maybe he really did say it was an enclosed system, and he asks you, why did you believe man and not my word, my prophets? Why didn't you believe that I wasn't speaking in hyperbole or whatever? You're going to have to answer for that. And I'm prepared to be 100% wrong on this and go before God and tell him, I'm sorry, I took you literally. No hesitation in my mind. I'm hoping you'll get that way too, but God only knows. It's a hard issue. Are you going to believe what God said or what man said? It's a faith thing. I may never know all of the details, but I know enough that what he said and what man says don't support each other. And just a few extra little things, I guess, if this just isn't enough for you to even look into it, and you're like, we have pictures. So most of the pictures on the NASA website say they're composites. In a court of law, that couldn't be used because they've been altered. The only one that's supposedly real is the one from the Apollo missions. Now I submit to you, go watch the Apollo 11 press conference and watch the demeanor of the men there, and tell me that those men look unashamed, like men who just traveled, to the most amazing place that you could possibly do, and which almost nobody's ever going to do. When I watched it, I saw men that looked ashamed, looked uncomfortable. So I asked you to watch that. I'll try to link it. The most exciting thing I've done, I can think of right now off the top of my head, is I biked down Pikes Peak. I did that with my sister. We were jazzed out of our minds. We were just like, yeah, high-fiving, and I told everybody at work, I was like, you gotta go do it, man. It's so cool, it's worth the money, and this, that, and the other thing. And I was just pumped for weeks. It was late in the year, I wish I could have done it again. Anyways, I was visibly excited about having done this. Think of the most exciting thing you've done, and then watch those guys. Another thing to look into, I guess. So, where I live, on the heliocentric model, according to the globe, if you do the math, if I'm facing east, I should be moving 800 miles an hour east. Now they say oh, in an airplane you don't feel anything and you're going 500. Well, I submit to you it's a level surface. On the heliocentric model, so if I'm going 800 miles an hour east, every minute I have to drop 150 feet plus. which is a lot. In an hour, I will have dropped over 100 miles. So in an hour, I have traveled 800 miles whilst falling 100 in that hour. I submit to you my senses, and I'm sure yours as well, don't sense this. And going back, God said it was on pillars, and it does not move. 4 times. So yeah, hope you stuck with me through this. Hope it at least planted a seed. You know, reach out. I could try to explain it. We could chat. Yeah, just look into it. I guess I hope that you'll get excited enough to be like, well, yeah, I don't want to go to heaven and be asked, you know, why I did not take his word literally. Like I said, I'm 100% prepared to say sorry. I took it literally. So I guess that's kind of the end of this part 1, Biblical Cosmology. This is The Truth is Unpopular. Stay tuned for the next episodes. Shalom.